Oh, yeah, EMS. No, not special appropriation. This was last night. 911 EMS. Got 911s, but EMS didn't.
Oh. Like you're the only one with us this morning. Maybe just you and a half.
Well, we got Dan.
Yes, we have Dan. Hey, Dan.
Morning.
Good morning. You had a chance to get up with Laura yet?
No, we're supposed to get together after lunch today.
Okay. Good deal. So I received your a letter. I think actually that went to out which way they want to go. It's my understanding from them that they want to be the scene investigators. So.
Yeah.
But anyway, whatever y'all can work out, if we can save y'all some time and effort, that'd be great.
Yep. We're supposed to get together this afternoon. I'll follow back up with you after we talk.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. I got the school documents. I've got the 911 that's from the EMS.
Who all's on?
We have Mitch, Dan, Chairman Matherly, Commissioner Wheeler.
I'm still looking for another commissioner. I would say Commissioner Malone will be along.
I'll let you know when he arrives.
Thanks.
Commissioner Malone has arrived.
Okay, that'll allow us to have a quorum. And so the first item this morning, and we'll just say welcome, call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum, and the determination of essential function of the governing body for this video meeting is we'll take the agenda under consideration, and we will I propose that this meeting, it has essential function for the governing body due to the continuing effort that's needed for the budget process. So we have a motion for the agenda and for that.
So moved.
All right, motion from Commissioner Wheeler.
Second.
Commissioner Malone. We'll dispense with the roll call and just, is there anyone opposed to this agenda? Hearing none, then we'll adopt it as presented. And so the first item of business, discussion regarding the fiscal year 21 budgets with 911, EMS, both Dan and our fearless chairman are both on board. It looks like Dan, you're up first with emergency medical services.
Okay. The only change in the budget this year as far as the county appropriation, we've gone back and forth for 7 years that I've been in this position about the inmate transports and billing the companies that provide medical coverage for the jail for those transports, and then they never pay for those. And there was discussion several years ago about just including that service or those transports in just an appropriation increase that would cover that annually, regardless of the number of the transports, instead of trying to do those on a case-by-case basis. The board discussed it this year as part of our budget preparation. We're still struggling with the current contractor to try to get payments for this past year taken care of. So that Lori and I went back and looked at the last 3 years, the number of transports and what that averages out to be as far as the cost of those transports at the TennCare level. And that's $37,000 a year average for that. The initial, it's in the letter. We didn't add it to the spreadsheet that's included in the request. Last year, the appropriation was 1.762. The commission initial, it's in the letter. We didn't add it to the spreadsheet that's included in the request. Last year, the appropriation was 1.762 going on. The commission initial, it's in the letter. We didn't add it to the spreadsheet that's included in the request. Last year, the appropriation was 1.762 going on. The commission initial, it's in the letter. We didn't add it to the spreadsheet that's included in the request. Last year, the appropriation was 1.762 going on. The commission initial, it's in the letter. We didn't add it to the spreadsheet that's included in the request. Last year, the appropriation was 1.762 going on. The commission initial, it's in the letter. We didn't add it to the spreadsheet that's included in the request. Last year, the appropriation was 1.762 going on. The commission initial, it's in the letter. We didn't add it to the spreadsheet that's included in the request. Last year, the appropriation was 1.762 going on. The commission initial, it's in the letter. We didn't the spreadsheet that's included in the request. Last year, the appropriation was 1.762 going on. The commission initial, it's in the letter. Spreadsheet that's included in the request. Last year, the appropriation was 1.762 going on. The commission initial, it's in the letter. Changes in individual line items, but nothing.
Questions for Dan?
Hey, Dan, this is a curiosity more than anything, but you guys did do the PPP loan?
Yes, sir, we did.
So at this point, you've closed and been funded?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're, as far as this year and what we're going through right now, we should be in good shape.
Other questions?
I'm curious too, on the jail transports, do you have contracts with the various sheriff's departments or the jails?
We don't with the jail. The only jail that we transport from is the Washington County Detention Center, and very occasionally we'll transport a state inmate from the city jail, and then we bill the state for that. But our contracts have always been with the healthcare provider for the jail. So whoever does their medical is who our contracts have been with. The current provider never would sign a contract with us. So we don't have a contract with them. Previous providers we did have contracts with. We rarely got paid, or it was always a struggle to get paid even with a contract.
Are they being told not to pay you?
Their opinion is that that's not part of their contract with the sheriff's department in the county, that they're not responsible for that. I think the sheriff's intention and their thought was that is part of the contract, but that's what they tell us, is that it's not part of their responsibility to pay those invoices.
Did that's the sheriff has indicated to me that she felt like he was included in the contract. It's a little perplexing at this point. As you said, this has gone on for years. Why, we can't get that resolved. I mean, it's either in there or not.
Right. And if we go this route, and this is how the county wants to handle it, when the resolution goes through, we just need to make sure that there's some wording in there that says the increased appropriation is to cover all inmate transports, and then that covers us with Medicare law. Medicare has a lot of pretty stringent guidelines on billing practices, and that we have to bill everybody just like we would bill Medicare and Medicaid. But they do have, and the Attorney General has an opinion that says if you receive funding from a municipality, and it's stipulated in that funding that it covers those transports, then you can do inmate transports without billing for them. We just need that some wording in that resolution to reflect that.
So the $37,000 calculation represents X number of transports at some cost. I know your transport cost is different depending on the medical services required during the transport. How'd you come up with that? Is this some sort of an average, or?
We took the average of based on the levels of service over the last 3 years, between advanced life support and basic life support, and what those rates were at the 10-care rate, and just came up with the average of what that was. I mean, we could bill individually, to the sheriff's department. Then that's more work that the sheriff has to do, or somebody in the department has to do, to verify those transports and process all that. We do bill if they're state inmates or they're federal inmates from the sheriff, or they're being transported out. We bill them and get paid for them. These are the ones that aren't. A lot of these haven't even been to court yet. And so they don't fall under state or federal yet.
Right. Okay. It's something we'll work on with the sheriff. Maybe if it's supposed to be covered in the contract, maybe we can just get a reduction in the contract to cover some of this. We really need to get it worked out. I agree with that.
Well, I think in my recollection is last year when this contract was implemented, the cost pool was increased to cover these transports as part of that. So there was money put back into the cost pool for that. It's just the contractor's not paying them.
Okay.
Educate me, how often do we put an RFP out, or do we bid out, or how often is that contract renewed with the healthcare provider for the inmates? Is that annually, or?
I think it's an annual contract, but I think we're in the second year with QHC. We made a change with the expectation of an improvement, but I don't think it's really resulted in much of an improvement. So it's a difficult business. I mean, just about everything about the detention center is challenging. Yeah. And this is one of them, particularly, this healthcare component within the detention center itself is amazingly complicated. But anyway, just shifting gears a little bit. Dan, I heard you say that you're anticipating about $500,000 additional cost that is directly related to this COVID-19 event. Did I understand that correctly? Is that in this fiscal year, or is that in 2021, or both?
It's not additional cost, it's lost revenue due to decreased call volume, the $500,000. So we're down about 25% on call volume. A lot of that is non-emergency calls that we're guaranteed to get paid for. We've got, what was the total yesterday? No, for expenses. We've spent about 29,000 in extra on preparation and PPE and things like that. Additional expense has only been about 29,000, but our lost revenue is what we're expecting about $500,000 to be.
Is that due to not having elective surgeries? And
A lot of it is elective surgeries. 911, the 911 calls are down too, just because there's not as many people out. But a lot of portion of that is because the doctor's offices are closed and elective procedures and things like that.
so the 29,000 direct cost that you've been able to capture, is that something that we're going to apply with for reimbursement for through TEMA and emergency management?
Yeah, we've got those. There's actually an assistance to firefighters grant, a federal grant that's out. I'm working on it. We can recoup a lot of that. What we don't recoup from that, then I'll submit to Rusty through the TEMA and FEMA.
Okay. Are you okay to get through the year with those additional expenses?
Yes, we'll be fine this budget year.
All right, so we're essentially asking for no new money with the exception of the transport cost. We can ever figure that out?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's correct.
Any other questions, Commissioner Wheeler or Commissioner Malone?
I've got one question. I guess it's somewhat more related to another area of the budget, but we need a little information from Mr. Wheely. We've got in the Public Safety Committee, we've been looking at military fire departments budget request, and fire departments has decided to elect not to participate in the program that we've been working with you all on. My understanding, but I want to make sure I'm correct, is that there will be no savings from that to you all, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure I was correct on that before we talk with them.
I mean, so the departments that we are doing that program with, Gray, Nolichucky, and Limestone, we have had a little bit of training expense, but it's very minimal.
Minimum.
Not enough that you would even notice it on the budget.
So no personnel expense savings.
No additional personnel costs or equipment costs or anything like that for doing those programs.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything from anyone else?
No, thanks, Dan.
Thank you all.
Dan, thank you. Appreciate that. All right. So we'll move on to our favorite commission chairman, Greg Matherly, the head of 911, doing a fantastic job there. Thanks for all you do. How much of a reduction are we going to see in this request?
Well, I do have some good news about our request, Mayor. What did you say? I didn't hear you, Mayor. These electronic meetings, they're hard to hear sometimes.
Sorry. Let me get my placard out.
Oh, Mayor, you're fading out on me. I think Susan's doing something to you, Mayor.
Yeah. Now, can you just?
Yeah, that's it right there. Well, I guess one of the things with our budget today, those costs you see in there are really dispatch cost of what it costs to on the dispatching side for the city and county both. You were good to us last year and helped us work towards our goals of getting our staffing up, and we have been able to hire some employees this year, and we are working very hard to train our new employees. I guess some of our big budget highlights in this budget, there's been a lot of things changed since I turned our budget into you, and we'll talk about those things as we go a little bit. I guess one of the biggest portions of it is our state money. One of the ways that the state money changed this year is they reduced our revenue portion by about $56,000 or $52,000. And instead of it showing as a revenue item, they are charging us for the state hosted controller each year $52,000. And the way they're doing that, they reduced our revenue portion of that money, and they just go ahead and take it straight out of our revenue. And that may be a slight change of what you'll see on these budget numbers. Our request hasn't changed any from last year. We still had policy and procedures clerk there, and also administrative payroll person assistants too. This year, some of the great things we've done, I feel like, and has helped everyone, is we've added the AIS capability and our new recorder, which gives us the capability to record without a bank of radios. And we all know that this radio replacement's coming very soon. So that gave us the ability to take out 20 radios that will not need to be replaced, or we'll have to pay the maintenance on those each year. And AIS is much more dependable. It records straight off of the radio system, straight onto the recorder. So you don't have any radios going down. You don't miss any recording traffic. And so we're very pleased with that. Our recorder cost this year for dispatch was $69,000. The AIS run about $117,000. We were able to pay for those things out of our budget with our capital money. The board of directors felt like that the AIS was very important and was very needed. So some of these things that you're not going to see on the budget that we've already paid for, just in equipment cost. And a lot of that's just based on dispatching needs. We've had some expenses. We have planned for a 12% increase in medical insurance. And we do have some addressing and support personnel increased cost. And we're really just trying to get caught up in dispatch cost of where we are. Now, with all those things being said, one of the last things the state did was they approved the 911 surcharge increase. I do not know what that will reflect on our budget. They meet May the 6th. One of the key questions here is, what does that money look like for 911? The state board says that they may help us some in the first month or two, or the first 6 months, to make us whole on the increase to get us to January 1. We don't start any of the new revenue collection until January 1 of this upcoming year. And so there probably wouldn't be we wouldn't see any revenue until March of next year. The state board currently has a substantial revenue set aside, and they think they could begin actually the funding us July 1, but they won't be able to determine that until May 6th. Then again, we can all talk about, how does our new economy here for a little while affect cellular telephone revenue? Is everybody able to keep that cellular telephone? And so we depend a whole lot still on cellular telephone revenue and what the state provides for us. So we really appreciate everything that the county's done and the city and what great partners you guys are. and I understand it's challenging times for everybody, and there's been a lot of changes from when we did our budget till today, and I know that there's a lot of changes in our budget. We have had some significant overtime cost in training. We are training 11 people here. When you have training going on, you are spending overtime money. We've kind of reached the peak of that and headed down as people get trained on more stations. Of course, that does save me additional money. And we still do have a few openings to fill. COVID has cost us a little overtime money. It has increased our cost as far as cleaning and sanitizing the building and just having additional people on staff for standby. And I guess that's just one of our concerns. I think we'll be fine through this year. But like Dan, we do have some monies to turn in, I guess, to Rusty and additional cost. We've both the city and county appropriation has been the same this year, the $900,000 for dispatch, and I just really the cost that I'm bringing you there is to get us close to the true cost of what dispatching is for the city and county. So, if you have any questions about our budget, I'll be happy to answer any of them.
Questions for Mr. Matherly? Chairman Matherly.
No, I'm direct.
So I'll ask the roughly $290,000 increase from last year. Is that 50% for county, 50% for the city?
No, that would be the county's cost of dispatching. When the board of directors, they wanted it broke down on how much cost it would be for the county and how much dispatch costs for the city. When we broke those costs down and divided those out, the county's portion that we charge of your share of employees, dispatchers, everything total is $1,189,000, and the current appropriation is $900,000. So we just bring you those costs back to let you all look at those and see what those costs are. And if you all would like to see the spreadsheet, we'll be happy to send that to you and to see exactly what you're paying for. And that does include CAD maintenance, all the necessary maintenance agreements and all the necessary equipment, replacement costs, and the operation of that entire dispatch center. Now, this year, one of the things I did was to reduce that cost was we figured in how much it would take for call takers, the 911 portion, to fund call takers. And we also 911, we're paying our portion on call takers this year. So I think some of the increases we see this year in there are really is a split of the 52,000 that did increase it a little bit. Our insurance cost up 12%, and just general overall switching over to the phone system has been fairly expensive. Of course, that's been more of a 911 cost than a dispatch cost. So I just want to try to bring you a true picture of what the cost of dispatch is, and now I think we've tried to make a fair assessment of that and bring it to the city and county. Now I think the board of directors felt like we did, or I don't. I think some of the things over the years we just haven't tried to fulfill that portion of the cost, and it's hard to catch up as cost increase every year.
You'd mentioned that the state was had reduced the revenue to you all, based on the new communication equipment. Is that roughly $90,000 reduction we see in the revenue side?
Yes, in the revenue portion, there was $52,000 that the state reduced out of our revenue that they send to us annually. And as well, we get a capital appropriation each year. Now, you never know what that capital appropriation is going to be. We don't know what it will be from year to year. We don't know until December. You really can't budget it. So with that money, those are the monies that we use to purchase large capital equipment, like the AIS. It was $117,000. We had put back enough money to pay cash for that without coming back to the county asking for $117,000. Our recording equipment was $69,000 this year. We paid for that in cash as well. So we didn't have to come back and ask the city or county for any additional money for dispatch. We try not to come back throughout the year to ask for any of those things. And if we can do it out of our capital money, those one-time appropriations, we do. This year as radio replacements come up, it's something being talked about. That'll be something else we'll have to address with our capital money. You just never know how much you're going to get from year to year. So it's hard to budget that money. And then with the loss of the $52,000 this year, it'll be significant for us, I think. But there again, I don't know how much revenue we're going to get back in from the state beginning in July.
So it's about a $90,000 roughly revenue reduction. 52 of it is from the state. I'm just a little bit curious about that. And the other thing I was just going to ask about in maintenance agreements with this equipment, the state communication piece, do they, in that $52,000 reduction, do they cover the maintenance on it? And do you expect to see a lower maintenance agreement expense?
I hope to see that. Yes. One of the problems is we've had such a hard time getting off of the CenturyLink onto the state system. We have spent approximately about $14,000 this year in money that we weren't expecting just to switch off onto this system. Now we are still operating partially off of CenturyLink, and we continue to have to pay for additional camera trunks to get on this system. So what I did is I went back to the state and went to renegotiate part of these costs. The state was good to us and recognized here in Northeast Tennessee that we did have some additional costs that they had expected. So they have gave us additional $10,000. I haven't seen that $10,000 yet to go towards this migration from CenturyLink over to AT&T. We also, once we get all of our equipment in, our EZNet and all these technical terms, what this EZNet line is when they get it installed, AT&T, we can work off that system right now. We just don't. CenturyLink has the addressing portion. So when your phone rings here, your number comes from one direction, and through the camera trunks, CenturyLink provides our addressing. So we have to be able to get all that to work together. So we are in transition, and hopefully after we get through this transition, yes, it will be a reduction in cost. But right now it is not, because we're paying, the state is going to go ahead and take their money out, and we're going to have to continue to pay CenturyLink until they get this problem resolved. Thank goodness, like I said, the state has stepped up to assist us in paying for some of those things. I just haven't seen the check yet. I'm sure they'll May the 6th they meet again to discuss, like I said, the additional funding.
Good deal. Is that, yeah. Oh, okay. Mr.
Mayor, one thing on the difference when you were talking there a minute ago on the 52,000 and the 95, we get the same amount each year. From the 1930, the reason that's reduced is it's in the 2020, the current year, the number on the 911 revenue.
Right.
In that figure, the capital money is figured into that as well.
Okay, that's all. Okay.
So the capital money in this year's number, the 2021, you won't see the one-time capital money. We don't know what it is, and we won't know until then. And plus the other revenue that was reduced.
Well, just it seems like it's on a very difficult trend for you going from 19 to 20, and I mean that number is continuing to move in a challenging direction when you need to increase your salaries and so forth to retain people and hire people. It's a tough job that those folks do, and I think you've done a really good job this year as far as getting some more people in there and the training and everything for them. But it becomes challenging when you have medical cost increase and salary cost increase to cover that. So it's tough to work on.
Well, I appreciate that very much, and the county and city both recognize these problems, and I appreciate them just taking the time to sit down and look at it. And in the last few years, I do. I think the state has recognized this year that we have all 911 centers have had a tough time in funding challenges, and I think that's one of the reasons that they did increase the revenue. Like I said, it's hard for me to sit here and tell you with the current economic conditions we're in, and the state board hasn't voted. They don't even meet till May the 6th. What my true revenue numbers are going to be. I can't sit here and honestly tell you that we will receive what's on this paper and we're going to get additional revenue, but I don't know what that is yet, and I won't know till May the 6th.
Are they going to give you a projection then as to what 6 months worth of these additional phone charges? Was that 32 cents a month? Is that right?
Yes, sir. It was. Be 34 really, but 32 will be coming back to the district statewide.
Hopefully that'll help some. Hey, great job. Again, other questions, Commissioner Malone or Commissioner Wheeler?
Yeah, I may have just a couple questions to make sure I'm understanding or I'm on the same page. Chairman, on the budget form where it references the contributions from primary government, I see the 900,000 and then the 1,189,000, and the difference is the requested increase. Is the contributions from other governments, agencies, the next line, is that the city's portion?
Yes, let me get on the same sheet of music with you.
I guess I was just to the mayor's question before. So the city is being asked for a similar increase, I suppose.
Yes, almost very close to the same increase. Yes, sir. Yes.
Good deal. I just wanted to make sure I understood. And then I'm curious, you mentioned the 12% increase in the health cost. I know we heard the good news from Michelle about the county's health expenses. And actually, just this week, I've gotten mine here at the bank, and thankfully there was no increase here. I'm just surprised to hear about a 12% increase on your side. Is that based on some prior year experiences, I guess, or what do you think's driving the 12% increase? Because I'm assuming that you referenced insurance costs. I guess that's when I look at the form, it looks like it's in the employee benefits line item.
Yes, and you're right. We're a different. We're under that community program, a community-based healthcare. We're a smaller group, so we fall under the smaller group plans. So we're based. Our community experience is from Mountain City to Knoxville, so that's kind of how our community, our rates are based off that community insurance. So if you're that smaller group, we're like you all are self-insured, and you can manage your own self-insured plan and reinsurance. We pretty much are kind of caught in a plan that it's not really based on your health experience. It's really based on the community's health. So if the community in these smaller groups takes a 12% increase, one of the ways that in the past we've been able to hold down this insurance is we really, we plan for a full staff, and of course you didn't have a full staff, and that kind of kept our costs down on insurance. But we're coming to the point now we're getting pretty close to being full staff, and we try to plan for that 12% this year because there's not a whole lot you can do. We've added an EAP program and some wellness things, and but where the county has added a clinic and done some things like that, I think, to improve their healthcare experience, that wouldn't be true because my rate increase is based on the community's health, not the groups the single group's health. So it's a little different.
Mr. Chairman, maybe going forward next year, we can look at seeing about including your group either in with the city or the county. If that looks like it might reduce the cost some. We both have the same insurance broker now, the Sherrill Morgan Group. So, maybe they could analyze it a little bit to see if folding you into one or the other might help. Would y'all be interested in looking at that?
We're always interested in reducing costs, Mayor.
Okay. All right. Other questions? You had something else, Commissioner Malone?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Commissioner Wheeler?
No questions.
All right.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right. So next item would be other FY21 budget discussions. Mitch, yeah, thank you. Okay, so this is an area of the special appropriations that we haven't looked at. You kind of want to walk us through what we have on the sheet?
I'll be glad to. What you have in front of you is the FY19 budget amounts, which were actually actuals, what the organizations requested in 2020 and what we actually funded. And then you have the last column is the FY21 request. Of course, the schedule starts off with our volunteer fire departments. You can see there on the screen, and I think what we've sent to you, if we haven't, we'll get it back out to you today. The total for fire protection is just a little south of $400,000 above what we funded in FY20. Again, EMA, as you know, and we've talked department, and we essentially share the net cost of that operation with Johnson City. Fall Branch does have a first responder program, which we contribute another $84,000 to. Have not received anything from the chief requesting anything different this year, so I've just dropped in what we funded last year. You'll notice that in FY20 they were requested $125,500 additional funding for their first responder ops, but which I suspect if they send something to us, it'll be a similar amount. But just for sake of pulling totals, I used last year's contribution amount. We've talked about 911. Animal control has requested, or the animal shelter has requested another $50,000. We talked about EMS. The Jonesboro Senior Center's up there request by 10, and what Mary tells me is that they have started a program called My Ride, which is to help get seniors back and forth at no cost. They have volunteer drivers. I think this is to pay, maybe the fuel cost and maybe some liability coverage. Jim, you may know more about that than I do, but that's what's driving that additional $10,000. Johnson City Senior Center requesting the same amount as prior year. The Johnson City Library is an additional 10. Dolly Parton Imagination Library, it's this flat. And you can see the rest of them are essentially the same. Those are all the increases, except for the foreign trade zone. There's a slight increase in their operational cost, and the way that works, of course, is that all the partners out there split the operational cost of running the foreign trade zone, which benefits all the regional manufacturers, distributors, etc., in terms of being able to bring stuff in, work on it, and then send it back out without incurring duties. And I'll open it up for questions or discussion, Mayor.
Okay, commissioners, questions on all of this? We can take it in sections, or we can take it item by item. How would you prefer to do that? All right. Let's start with the volunteer fire departments. They're at the top of the list. We increased them last year, $10,000 each, from 120 to 130. They've requested $180,000 this year.
Hey, let me ask, Mitch, do we have that worksheet, or do we have it by email? I was looking for it.
I thought we sent it out to you last week. If we
maybe so, I may not have scrolled far enough down in my.
Oh, let me double check. While we're talking here, I'll go ahead and just attach it and send it to you guys right now, if that's okay. Give me just a second.
Go ahead and take that, Mr. Malone. We got time.
I've already dispatched that.
We, the request from the volunteer fire departments is certainly well taken. It's a little hard to know what. I guess we might need to look at where we are overall. How much are we? Assume we're going to be having to look pretty closely at the overall budget with as little increased revenues we're going to have, and I think that's probably a driving factor in making this decision on these, at least it would appear to me to be.
Okay, so maybe this is a good time to just talk about this real quick while while y'all getting this information in front of you. The budget meeting next week, it would be our plan, I think, to present some sort of a first cut at our proposed budget. So we'll be working on that. Mitch's that's sort of his wheelhouse, but we'll work on some of that together. Input on so we've heard from all the office holders, we've heard from the department heads, we've heard from most of the major areas around the county that are budgetary, and so any input you have as to recommendations with respect to those requests will be appreciated. That's why we go through this collectively, and if you could get those to us, probably Mitch specifically, but either one of us, by the end of the day Friday of this week, then we can begin to bake those into the initial proposal that we'll start working on this weekend. So, all right. Does everybody have this? I think you're right, Commissioner Wheeler. But so as we put something into the budget to look at for, say, volunteer farmers, do you want to put in the same amount that we had in there for last year as a starting place? I assume that what I've heard you say was that as we go through available funds in the budget process, that this would be a place where we'd like to come and add revenue if it's at all possible. Did I understand that correctly?
Subject to the yes, sir.
Okay. So for now, for this first cut, would it be okay with y'all if we drop in the 130,000, or do you want to put in a different number to start with?
I think 30, or basically the same amounts from the current budget year. I think that's where the starting point needs to be.
All right. Okay. So EMA was looking at roughly the same amount, so there's really nothing to deal with there, and we'll try to get some more information on that transportation cost from the detention center to flesh that out. What's your feeling on 911? Where do you want to start there?
If
750, is it?
If I interject, the fund balance projections and whatnot that you've seen earlier, just so you all will know, that does include those amounts are at last year's funding levels. So as you increase appropriations, that'll have a negative impact on those fund balance projections.
I think we'll have a lot clearer picture about 911 in the middle of May, after their state board has had a chance to meet and figure out what these state allocations are and make some projections about what this revenue increase will be from the cell phone service that we'll actually only look at six months worth this year, but I think they'll be able to project at least some of what that'll be. So do we want to take the full amount that was requested and add to the 900,000? And do we want to put in 1.189, or do you want to put in 900,000 for 911?
Well, the way I understood it, maybe we I'll ask this again. That's they're looking at that as the cost. They're just passing on to us. I think we might have to put in the 1.1 figure.
Okay.
Is that accurate, Mr. Chairman?
That was what we figured for dispatch cost to the county, and going back just a second is that was just about the same amount to the city, but it takes both. It takes all three of us working together to make everything work. So yes, that's what the cost would reflect.
Mr. Chairman, is that the amount the city put in their budget this year, or do you know?
I do not know what the city put in their budget yet. I have not been to any kind of budget hearing with the city, or heard from Mr. Peterson as far as their numbers are. But we made a big effort last year to make sure the numbers were the same from the county and city, the 900,000.
Right, and of course we added more to get our portion up to equal.
Yes.
And I think in past discussions you told me you felt like that the call balance was about equal.
It does, and the city and county and 911, we all have to work together to make it all work for everybody, because the city and county, we use the same EMS system, and we're splitting that cost. And as fire services, it's just, it all works together for the good of the community. And if you lose a portion of that, it's hard. So it all works together.
Yeah, there was a time when we trying to balance the cost based on the call volume in the city versus the call volume in the county. And while that is a metric that we can look at, and it may be a little higher in the city, the reality is my observation from 911 business is that regardless of the call volume, it takes the same number of people to manage the calls in the city and the county. They've got teams of people that dispatch for the sheriff and Johnson City Police and volunteer fire and Johnson City Fire and so forth and so on. And whether the calls are more or less in one place or the other, it still takes about the same amount of people. It still takes the same equipment and so forth. Would that be fairly accurate, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, that's correct. And you have to have those people there on duty, whether you have one call or 100 calls an hour. Just to make sure that everybody gets the same quality of service.
So, Commissioner Wheeler, your recommendation is to go ahead and enter the 1.189 number for now. And if it looks like you're going to get more state revenue, Mr. Chairman, we can reduce that as we move through.
That'll be fine. Like I said, just as soon as I know my numbers, Mayor, I'll get those to you.
Okay. Commissioner Wheeler, is that your preference, Commissioner Malone?
I'm okay with that. I may ask the chairman, Matherly, one additional question. I'm just curious, and I only took a quick glance at the audit, but as I think about an organization, I guess like 911. In terms of the cash assets, there's certainly, you kind of have your working capital, you kind of have your capital reserves where you're trying to build some money where you don't come to the county every time you need a capital asset. And I think we are grateful. So you have your working capital, your reserves, and then perhaps some additional monies beyond the working capital where you're probably trying to keep 90, 120, maybe even 180 days worth of reserves. But are there additional dollars where you've sort of got a rainy day fund where when we have a year maybe like this one, where we're faced with some hard decisions and some cuts to make things work, is there any dollars there that could be used? And I'm just asking because I don't know.
Of course, I think the board has been very proactive in putting aside some monies that could work in a time of need. And yes, there is. We do have some money that is set aside, but you know, a lot of times we sometimes have to go to those monies. Replacement cost is something here that we look at on an every 5-year basis. So in our capital replacement cost, I mean, we can run into a lot of money if we don't continuously work towards building those reserves some, because it seems like everything, as you well know, in the technology world is getting more expensive, and this 5-year replacement, I think, is something that I always worry about, is making sure we're up to date on the latest equipment. One of the reasons is the state, Tennessee is a very progressive state when it comes to 911 service. And we are not very far from texting to 911. Will that take upgrades here? Yes, and we've paid for some of those upgrades already. So yes, we do have some cash put aside, and I think that's some of the reason is just to kind of give us a cushion of if we come up in 6 months and say, hey, we're switching over to something, we need you're going to have some new equipment in here. Radio replacement. A lot of times we don't come back to the county and ask for radio replacement. You know, a lot of times we cover those costs for ourselves. So yes, we do have some money put aside to, so we're not coming back in December, and we don't mind to go back to our own reserves.
Well, thank you. And that's prudent management. I guess I was just wondering what happens if we can't go all the way to the 1189, if we have to end up at 110 or something. And I just wanted to make sure.
We're going to make it. That's what's going to happen. We're going to get through it. The county's been a great partner. City's a great partner. All of our partner agencies, and we're going to get through it. And we're going to be team players, and our people. Of course, like I said, I don't know what our revenues are going to look like May the 6th. You know, I don't know what the state's going to tell us, and but I appreciate you. You're just listening to our request, and if there's anything you can do that to help us, and you know our needs, and the mayor knows our needs, and I just appreciate you listening to our request, and we're going to make it, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments on 911? We'll, without any further ado, we'll enter 1,189,000 for now. Animal control. I'm on that board. I'm going to recommend that we leave that at $200,000. We increased it 10,000 last year, and they. I just would. I think they'll be okay at that $200,000 level. Does anybody have any comment on that? Questions, concerns? Okay. Next is EMS. What number would you like to put in there?
I guess I would go with the request as it's shown, but separately try to figure out the transport issue.
1762.
Yes.
All right. Jonesboro Senior Center, increase from 40 to 50,000. Leave it at 40, add the 10,000. What's your recommendation?
I'm sorry, I got thrown out of the meeting somehow. Where are we?
Welcome back. Sorry, we are at the Jonesboro Senior Center. Perfect opportunity to come back in. Expectation would be if we do make this change, we'll have the same request from Johnson City, just as they've always paralleled as long as I can remember.
Well, while we're looking at that and with that comment, looking at the library, was there any explanation given for it's a 10% increase in that one, the Johnson City Library? Was there, I kind of appreciate the fact that somebody gives an explanation for the increase, especially in a year where we're going to be so tight.
Normally the request is 25,000. We have left it at this number now for a number of years, and you'd also note that the $28,500 for the Dolly Parton Imagination Library is for that. Part of that is for that library as well.
Yeah. Commissioner, I can send you. Yeah, the library did provide. The Johnson City Library provided a 2-page letter outlining their request, which I can get to you all to take a look at. I think they have some. Just glancing through it, of course, they've got pay increases that they've had over the years. And the county just has not. We've maintained that funding level, and I think they're just trying to get to a point where inflation and everything hadn't eaten them up. So we'll send Ms. Turpin's request letter out to you.
Having sat on the county library board for some time, I will say this: you might get the question, why would the Washington County invest an additional $100,000 in the Johnson City Library? And I would just say that the libraries really work in consort with each other. Gray, Jonesboro, and Johnson City, they trade materials, whether it's audio, video, or hard copy books. The Johnson City Library System maintains the computer programming for the checkout and that sort of thing that all three of the libraries use, and it would be virtually impossible, I think, under the current staffing and so forth, for Washington County Library to manage its own system. So those three libraries really work in concert with each other. Would you like to just make that 100,000 as well, and with the note that would be another place you might want to come back and consider later?
I think so.
Yeah, we didn't. And looking back at the Washington County Library, and only just to try to figure out how to deal with this, but there was almost no increase there, so maybe that would be a good way to do it. And then if we can come back, we'll come back to it.
Okay. So bouncing back up to the senior centers, what's your preference there?
I think as a starting point, we've got to use the 40 from last year and come back to it if we can. But percentage-wise, that is a significant increase as well.
I don't disagree with that. I think we ought to. It might be interesting to look at, and again, I don't have any problem with increasing both. Our senior centers in both locations really provide a lot of services to residents in the county, and I'm not discounting that at all. But when we look at the, I know they're both providing a good bit of service to citizens outside their corporate limits, the city limits or town limits. And it might be interesting to look at that because to me, looking at 80,000 between the two, that's probably a really good bargain that we're getting.
They serve a lot of people, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Dolly Parton is the same amount. Frontier Health is the same amount. First Tennessee Human Resources is the same amount. Heritage Alliance, they asked for a $5,000 request. Are you okay with just leaving that at 15 as well?
Yes.
Yes, particularly for them.
Okay, well, all the rest of them going down there look like they're, they're really unchanged. Might note the bottom, Northeast State Scholarship, we'll go ahead and just put it back in under them again. I will note that last year they identified, they spent $37,000 to produce the scholarships for our two high schools in the CTE program. So we'll see how that looks going forward. I've asked Dr. Flannery for some details as to who those students were, and that we might actually recognize that at some point, because that's a pretty substantial contribution that just sort of seems to me gets lost in the shuffle. And if we could acknowledge the fact that, we're investing another $25,000 in our students, it might be a good thing to do. So,
Agreed.
Any other comments, or you want to reduce any of these things or increase them, just from this list?
Not wanting to change anything, but I do have a question on, Mayor, have you had any conversations with Jonesboro about, I noticed their request was different, and I don't know if that's based on anything or not, but I do know that over the last several years, there's been some struggle and discussion back and forth about whether they can continue to operate outside the town limits. And I just want to know, if we're going to face that, what we're looking at there. Do you know whether they've had any talks with you about that?
Are you talking about the fire departments?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Commissioner Wheeler, not recently. We definitely have had that conversation in the past, but probably not for 6 or 8 months. And it's a challenge, and we could, the challenges for them. I mean, obviously, they're a Jonesboro entity, and if they're responding to a fire call outside of the town limits, and then there's an issue within the town that they are slow to respond to, then obviously that would be problematic. So,
I guess in my conversations with them, and that's a complicated situation with me being their attorney. But what I have suggested, telling them, I'm putting on my county commission hat for a minute here, is that we need, from the county standpoint, it would be greatly appreciated if we had significant heads up on that. I don't know, I'm not in a position to make any commitments for the town. The thing I would be worried about is if they pulled out, even 90 days would be pretty sudden for us to be trying to figure out how to deal with that volunteer fire district outside the town limits. But I'm wondering if there might not maybe some discussion, especially with the new administrator coming in, that it might be good if when you get opportunity to meet with him, to sort of talk through that, and at least maybe some understanding that there would be that, to me, it would be, if we could work out something where we get a year's notice, that give us time to do something with it. But I don't know if they'll commit to that or not. But
we would almost have to be able to have that at a budget year cycle in order to try to fill that gap somehow, which I'm not really sure how we would. The new EMS station in Limestone would help in a certain sector of that, perhaps if it had a fire component to it. But yeah, it's difficult. But picking on the new guy, I like that idea. That's good. You probably work on him a little bit.
Yep.
You did a great job in finding under a difficult challenge or somebody to step into Bob's shoes. But you found a great person. He's done a great. Every place I've ever had an opportunity to work around him, he's been great.
I think he'll do a fine job, but he's going to get a lot of push from inside about the not only the cost issues, but the liability issues with them being outside the town limits and that type of thing, as far as leaving the town uncovered. So I think it would help if he's getting both sides of that. And again, I'm not really in a position to do that as a commissioner because of the town relationship. But I think if you could do that, it would help.
Okay, that would be good. Yeah. So, really, it would probably be a challenge for us to, to fund the Jonesboro Fire Department if they decided not to respond out of town. So it's a little bit of a two-edged sword. We've got to figure out, where that balance might be.
And I'm not sure that that's fully understood in the county level. That they know that very well. They're looking at that and assuming that would not, be funded. And if that's why. But I don't think that's a deterrent necessarily. I mean, they're looking at what their liability risks are, and I don't mean from a being sued standpoint. I mean from a loss of property inside the town. Yeah,
sure. Yeah. For now, you suggest we just leave it the same though until we have some other definitive information from them.
I'm in agreement with that. Yeah.
Right. Any other changes y'all contemplate on this particular special appropriations group? If not, we'll bake that stuff in. If you have a different trend of thought, again, if you let us know by the end of the day, Friday, we can get that baked into the budget pie that we'll look at next week. So, Mitch, are there any other things that are on your mind that we want to try to cover today with respect to this 21 budget discussion?
Well, there's probably a lot of things that are on my mind, but no, nothing for immediate action.
If you could use a haircut,
I know. I gotta wait till the end of May now. I don't know what I'm going to do about that.
Yeah, well, I don't have much, but the little I have is shaggy. So, commissioners, do you all have anything that you would want to work on this morning that we've not yet touched on in your mind?
No, we appreciate what you all are doing. It's a big job this year. Always big, but bigger this year.
It has an added challenge this year.
It does. It does have an added challenge, and we've had just a few minor distractions, working along through that. So, but we did get some decent information. By the way, Commissioner Light called in during the meeting and said he had to take his wife to the hospital this morning, although he believes that they're going to be able to come back home today. So that's why he was not with us this morning. Just pass along our prayers to them as they deal with some challenging health issues. Okay. Yes.
We meet next Wednesday, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is that are we still meeting electronically then?
We will be. Governor's order yesterday, continued to not have small groups, and we're still under before the 18th. Whether or not he's going to extend this electronic meeting protocol beyond the 18th of May, I have no information on that. Okay. Anybody, anything else for the good of the meeting today? All right. Looks like we want to get on to other stuff, and we'll declare this meeting adjourned. And thank you again. any information on this you'd like to share, please get it to us on Friday, and we'll see you tomorrow at some meeting probably.
Thank you.
We're adjourned.
Thank